We're learning the Gemara today on Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, 5 lines from the top. The Gemara continues with halachas regarding the schach, specifically regarding the halacha of the placing bundles of schach, different materials, onto the sukkah. Amrav Gidel Amarav, Hai Avkusa de Dikla, the shoots that come out at the trunk of a palm tree. Mesachechim Behu, they can be used for schach. Afal Gav da Gidi, even though at their roots they are sort of tied together. That's the way they grow, and you pull them out of the ground, tie it together that way, and you want to use them as schach, so it's okay to use them. Why? Eged b'dei shemayim lo shmei eged. Something that's tied together naturally, b'dei shemayim, that's the way it grows, it's not considered to be an eged. The gzeira of the chachamim regarding the eged, regarding a bundle, doesn't apply here. Afal gav da gidi. So again, I'm continuing where I'm holding. Va'afal gav da hoda agidluhu. Even more so, even if he went and then tied also the other end. As Rashi explains, he places it on the sukkah and he wants it to be able to be placed down in the right place to cover the holes and to create the proper shade. So if the schach is not going to be tied on the other side, it's going to be all over the place and it won't cover properly. So he ties it at the other end as well. It's also not an issue. Why? Eged b'chad lo shmei eged. The rule is when you have something that's really one entity, it's one shoot, that's the way it grows. So if you tie it all together, that's not called an eged. A bundle is when you take different pieces, different branches, and you tie them together. But here, since naturally b'dei shemayim, on one end it's all tied together, and that's not called an eged, that's not called a bundle, that's one. So therefore, if you tie it at the other end, you're tying something which is really all one. So there's no eged. Rav Chisda, Rav Vina Bashila. Rav Chisda said, Rav Vina Bashila, the same exact halacha regarding another instance. Hani Dukri Dekoni. These shoots that come from reeds, they can be used as schach, afagav da gidininu, even though they're tied together. But eged b'dei shemayim lo shmei eged. If it's created this way naturally from heaven, this eged that it's tied together is not an eged. And again, va'afagav dahada agad lahu, even if he goes and ties it together at the other end, it's also not an issue of a bundle, because eged b'chad lo shmei eged. The fact that he's tying something which is really one entity, it's not that doesn't fall under the category of a bundle, and the gzeira of chachamim does not apply to this. Tanya nami yachi, we learned so in a braisa as well. Konim v'dukranim, reeds and dukranim, these shoots that come from the reeds, mesachechim behem, you can use it as schach. So what does this braisa mean? Konim, it says that you can use reeds as schach. Pshita, obviously. What would be the issue with using reeds? Eime, so the way to read this braisa is konim shel dukranim mesachechim behem, that when you have these shoots that grow from the reeds, even though they look like bundles, nevertheless, because it's b'dei shemayim, and even if you tie it at the other end, you're tying something which is really one entity, it's not an issue, and you could use it as schach. So here the Gemara brings another statement that was said from the same Ameira in the name of Ravina Bashila. It's not connected to the schach, but it's the same Ameira. So Hani merirte da agma, this merirte, this morer that grows in the swamps. Adam yetze ben yidei chivase bePesach. A person could be yetze his obligation of morer on Pesach. So there are various interpretations. Some Mefarshim say that this refers to chazeres, romaine lettuce, and it grows in a swamp, and it has this name, merirte da agma, this romaine lettuce of the swamp. So the chiddush is, even though it has that accompanying name, nevertheless you could use it for the morer. Others say that, because Rashi here says this actually, chazeres shalagram. Others say Rashi doesn't mean dafka chazeres. Merirte, in the Mishnah there, in the Psachim, when it talks about the 5 different kinds of bitter herbs that could be used for morer, so one of them is merirte, so it refers to merirte, not specifically chazeres. But the Gemara brings a question of this, meisvei. The question is, it says regarding Ezof. Ezof. Torah requires Ezof to be used. This is by the Korban Pesach and Mitzrayim, they had the Ezof, and then you have it by Metzora, by Paraduma. Whenever the Torah uses the term Ezof, so the Braisa says, V'loi Ezav Yavan. This refers dafke to an Ezav, and it actually seems to be a Mishnah. So this is an Ezav. It has to be only having the name Ezav, V'lo Ezev Yavan, not a Ezev that has a name Ezev Yavan, that it comes from Greece. V'lo Ezev Kuchli, not the name Ezev Kuchli, that it's blue Ezev. V'lo Ezev Midbari, not a Ezev from the Midbar, from the desert. V'lo Ezev Raimi, not a Roman Ezev. It has to be a Ezev that has no other added name to it. V'lo Kol Ezev Sheyesh L'Shem Levai, no Ezev that has any added name. It's not the original Ezev that the Torah says should be used whenever it requires Ezev. If so, the question is, why here regarding Marer, if it has an added name that it grows in the Agam, so it's a Merirta of the Agam, how could that be used for Marer? Abaye answers, there's a difference. If you have something that has a different name before Matan Torah, it's already divided in different categories, like it is with the Ezev. There's this kind of Ezev, another kind of Ezev, different types. And the Torah comes and was particular, and the Torah uses the term Ezev, the plain Ezev, not the one that has an added name. The Yidua sheyesh l'shem levai. So here we know that there are different kinds of Ezevs. That some have other names to it, and the Torah is being particular to use dafka the Ezev that does not have another name. But v'hani, so that's regarding the Ezev. But v'hani, over here, when it comes to the Marer, lo nishtana shmai koydem matan Torah klal. They did not have any other name. There's no additional name that it had before Matan Torah. There's the Marer. Whether it grows in the Agam, it doesn't grow in the Agam. Before Matan Torah, it didn't have any particular name. In later generations, people gave it this added name. But really, it's all one category. So therefore, the fact that the Torah says Marer and it does not add, which means no added name, it doesn't exclude these that got this added name in later generations. Rava says a different answer. Hani mirirte stome shmaya. Really, this Marer, even the ones that grow in the Agam and the swamps, really they are the same exact Marer that grows anywhere else. It's the same category. It's no different. And their name is really Marer, without any added name. It's not modified by the fact that it has this added name. The reason why people refer to it as the Marer that grows in the swamps, that's where this is mostly found, and most of them grow there, so therefore people refer to it this way. But really it's the exact same Marer as a regular Marer, and therefore can be used. It's not an accompanying name that modifies this into a different category. The Magen Avram, from this Gemara, proves a very fundamental thing regarding the mitzvah of Marer, because there's a simple question that the Mefarshim ask here. The Gemara is asking a question from Ezev to Marer, that we see when the Torah writes Ezev, it can't have any additional added name to it. It modifies it into a different category. And therefore the same thing should apply to the Marer. How can we use the Marer that grows in the swamp? But the question is, there's a huge difference. By Ezev, the Torah writes clearly Ezev, that word Ezev, and therefore we know that it excludes any Ezev with an additional name. By Marer, it doesn't write in the Torah clearly what Marer refers to. Marer means a bitter herb. And there are different types of vegetables that are bitter that could be used. So similarly by Marer, we could just simply say, it grows in the Agam, it does not grow in the Agam, it has that added name or not. What difference does it make? Over here the Torah doesn't say the particular name of what should be used as that bitter herb. So the Magen Avram says, so from this Gemara we can prove what Mefarshim say, what some Rishonim say in Psachim, that the Mishnah there in Psachim does give 5 different categories of what could be used as Marer: Chazeres, Tamcha, Olshin, and so on. But it's only those 5. Chachamim were Makabel. They had a tradition that when the Torah wrote Marer, it doesn't say particularly which bitter herb it's referring to, but it refers only to one of those 5. Any other one is not included in what the Torah wrote when it says Marer. So therefore, even when by Marer, although it doesn't say one particular bitter herb, but it means specifically these 5, and if it has any added name that modifies it, it's not these 5 that Chachamim were Makabel. And Alter Rebbe in Shulchan Aruch in Siman Tov Ayin Gimel brings this Magen Avram as well, that it's dafke these 5, not any other bitter herb. Sagt the Gemara weiter, Omer Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda said, going back to the issue of a bundle, that Eged Bechad, when you have something that's tied together in a bundle, but it's really just one. You took one stalk and you tied it. Lo Shmei Eged, that's not an Eged, it's not called a bundle. And therefore, both for Sukkah, it won't be possible for Schach. And as the Gemara here is going to bring regarding the mitzvah of Ezev, where the Torah says it has to be an Agudas Ezev, a bundle of Ezev, it's not a bundle. Shloisha Shmei Eged, if you're tying 3 stalks together, so that's an Eged. Shnayim, if you're tying two together, so that's a machlokes Rabbi Yossi v'Rabbanan. So Rav Chisda said that will be a machlokes of Rabbi Yossi and Rabbanan, whether tying two together qualifies to be a gudas eizov, or to be possible also to be used as chach. And the Gemara is going to focus now on the mitzvah of eizov as it brings there a Mishnah. The Tnan we learned in the Mishnah, mitzvahs eizov shloisha klochim. The mitzvah of eizov is to use 3 stalks to tie them together. Ubehen shloisha gevoilin, and there are 3 stems that come out of these stalks. Rabbi Yossi says mitzvahs eizov shloisha gevoilin. The mitzvah of eizov is to use 3 stalks. V'shiyarav shnayim, and the stems that come out, even if one of them broke off and there's only 2 of them, 2 stems left, that's good enough. The garduma of kol shehu, and when you use, Rashi says, when you use these eizov to spray with it, so over time it could break off and you don't have any of the stems left over. But if you have any garduma of any remnants of it, just a kol shehu, that's enough. So now, what exactly is the machlokes here between the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yossi? So Kasal Kedaiten, so at this point, with the way we're thinking to interpret this machlokes of the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yossi is as follows. So the Gemara starts with what Rabbi Yossi said. With the shiur of shnayim, Rabbi Yossi says even if you have remnants only of 2 stems, so that's good. So wouldn't that mean that if later, if there's only remnants of this, it's good? So even in the beginning, if you only tie 2 stalks of these eizov together, that should also be good. V'hai dektani shloisha, and this that Rabbi Yossi begins saying that you should have 3 stalks and that should have 3 stems. L'mitzvah, that's a mitzvah l'chatchila. You should try to have 3, but you don't have to have 3. If when it breaks off, 2 are good enough. Shouldn't it be good enough in the beginning as well? L'chatchila you should have 3, but you don't have to have 3. So that's Rabbi Yossi's opinion. With Rabbi Yossi, shloisha l'mitzvah. So now, how do we understand this machlokes? Rabbi Yossi is saying that the requirement of 3 in the beginning is only l'chatchila, as a mitzvah. But it's not necessary, as we see from the fact that he says if there's only 2 that are left over, it's good enough. So l'Rabbanan shloisha la'akiv. So when the Rabbanan, the Tanna Kama and the Braisa said that the mitzvah of eizov is to have 3 stalks and 3 stems, he's saying that that's a must. If one broke off, then it's not good. So that's the machlokes here. When you have an agudas eizov made of 3, that's for sure good. But if you have an agudas eizov that's made of 2, Rabbi Yossi says that that's good. Only l'chatchila do you need 3, and the Tanna Kama is saying no, you must have 3. So this is where Rav Chisda brings a source for what he was saying that this is a machlokes. Fragt the Gemara, how could you explain Rabbi Yossi's opinion this way? But we learned in the Braisa, Rabbi Yossi says, eizov shetchilasai shnayim, eizov that in the beginning it's only 2 stems, v'shiyarav echad, and then afterwards it's only 1. It broke, and now you have only 1 puzzle. It's going to be puzzle. Vein a kosher, and it won't be kosher achiyei tchilasai shloisha, unless you have in the beginning it was 3 stalks and 3 stems, shiur of shnayim, and only if 1 broke off and you have now 2 that are left over, then it's going to be kosher. So Rabbi Yossi here is clearly saying that you must have in the beginning 3 stalks, 3 stems. So Rabbi Yossi is the one that says that 3 is a must, not just a mitzvah l'chatchila. We can't compare what Rabbi Yossi said, that if 1 broke off, that then it's good if it's only 2. And say that the same thing is also in the beginning, that you only need 2, and 3 is just for l'chatchila. No, in this Braisa, Rabbi Yossi clearly says that it won't be kosher until you have in the beginning, you must have 3 in the beginning. So it's clear, Rabbi Yossi says 3 is a must. So therefore the Gemara says, eipach. If so, let's reverse the explanation of the machlokes between the Tanna Kama and the Rabbi Yossi from what we said before. And that is, Rabbi Yossi shloisha la'akiv. According to Rabbi Yossi, the requirement of 3 stems in the beginning is a must, as he says clearly here in this Braisa. And Rabbanan shloisha la'mitzvah. And when the Rabbanan, the Tanna Kama before said that you should have 3 in the beginning, the Tanna Kama is the one that was only saying that as a mitzvah l'chatchila, and it's not ma'akiv b'di'evet. Right, so going back to the lashon of the Braisa before, in the Mishnah actually, it's a Mishnah where it said mitzvahs eizov shloisha klochim uben shloisha gevailim. The Tanna Kama says mitzvah, he means only l'chatchila, but not that it's a must. So, but we still see here the source of what Rav Chisda said, that the requirement of 3, that should create a bundle of an agudas eizov, that's a machlokes between the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yossi, whether it's makif, whether that's a must or not. Tanya, and the Gemara brings a support from another Braisa to this, that this is the Chachamim's opinion, that 3 is only Lechatchila, but it's not a must, because it says in the Braisa, Eizoiv, the Eizoiv that's used, Shetchilasai Shnayim, in the beginning it was only 2, V'shiyara v'echad, and then what's remnant of it is that one broke and you have only 1, kosher. This is kosher. So who's speaking here in this Braisa? So it's obviously not Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Yosi in the previous Braisa said that it must be in the beginning 3. 3 is a must. In this Braisa it says only 2 is a must. So this is the Tanakama, this is the Rabbanan speaking. And they say that in the beginning there could be 2, and if 1 broke and it now is only 1, it's still kosher. The ain't apostle, it's not going to be apostle, achiyet chilasai v'shiyarav echad. Won't be apostle unless in the beginning it was only 1, or when it broke off, you have now what's left over only 1. So the Gemara asks on this, shiyarav echad apostle. You're saying that if it broke off 1 and now it's going to be apostle, how could you say that? But ha'amrit shiyarav echad kosher. In the beginning of this Braisa it says that in the beginning it must be 2, and even if it broke off and now you're left with only 1, it's still going to be kosher. So in the beginning of the Braisa, it says that that's kosher, and then in the end of the Braisa it says, Achiyet chilasai v'shiyarav echad. So what does chilasai v'shiyarav mean? It doesn't mean chilasai v'shiyarav echad. You can't read this together. That it's only going to be possible if in the beginning it was 1, and in the end it was 1. If in the beginning there's only 1, in the end there's only 1. So you have to read this separately. Either in the beginning there was only 1, or at the end there's only 1. Meaning in the beginning there were 2, and now there's only 1. Then it's going to be possible. But that contradicts what it said right before that in the Braisa, that if in the beginning it's 2, and now it broke off and there's only 1, that it would be kosher. So how do you read this Braisa? Ela, the proper way to read this Braisa is, Eime, read the Sefer as follows. It's all read as one, that the only time the Ezav, the Agudas Ezav, is not a proper bundle and it's possible is if in the beginning it's only 1, like in the end, meaning like in a case where it broke off in the end and you're left with only 1. If you started off that way, if it was only 1 in the beginning, then it's going to be possible. That's how you read the Braisa. But if it has 2 in the beginning and it broke off afterwards and now it's only 1, it would be kosher. So this is the Tanakama, this is the Rabbanon that say that 2 in the beginning is going to be kosher. So if so, this is the source for what Rav Chisda said, the Tanakama in the Mishnah, where he required 3, that wasn't the requirement, that was just a mitzvah, l'chatchila. But as we see in this Braisa, to make an Agudas Ezav, to have 2 together, b'diavad is also good. Whereas Rabbi Yosi says that you have to have 3 in the beginning to create the Agudas Ezav, and it's a must to have 3 dafka. Going back now to the halachas of the bundles, whether it's kosher for schach or not. Darash meremer. So meremer darshant. Hani is suryaise the surah. These bundles of surah, mesachichem behu, they could be used as schach. Afagav the ogdon, even though they're tied together in a bundle. The Gzeir of Chazal doesn't apply here because leminyana balmuda ogdon, they're only tied together when they're sold to have the number of stalks or the number of pieces that are tied together, and the person buys them and he unties them. It's not left that way. And even when they are even when they are put down to dry, they're not left ever in bundles. Rav Abba said, Hani tzrifi de orveni, these huts that are made from the aravis branches, from a willow tree. So these huts, so Rashi here says that these are huts that are created in the shape of a dome. And the way they're made is, you take these willow branches and they tie them together on the top, and then they also tie them together at the edges and the bottom to be held together. So they're tied as sort of as bundles on both ends. Kivin shuhutra rashi madanim shalahem, when the tip on the top where it comes together and it's tied together, when that's untied, ksheidin. This material, you can take it now and use it as the schach for a sukkah, even though seemingly it's still tied at the bottom. So the Gemara says, but v'ha'agidim itatoi, it's still tied at the other end on the bottom, so it's still a bundle. How could it be used? So the Gemara brings 2 shittas about this. Rav Papa says, you're right. So when did Rav Abba say it could be used? The shari luhu, that he untied it on the other end at the bottom as well. Ravuna Breder Rav Yeshua says, even if he did not untie the other end, it still could be used, because kol eged she'ena asil taltal, anytime you have something that's tied in a bundle but it cannot be carry it around this way in a bundle. You're going to carry it around. It's going to scatter around. It's going to unravel. Leish meyeged. That's not a bundle. The Gzeira of Chazal does not apply to this. Omar Abba Omar Shmuel. Abba said in the name of Shmuel. So another statement here that Abba as well said. Yirokis she'omru chachamim. The vegetables that Chachamim said that Adam Yetze ben Yedei Chavase bePesach, that a person can use them for the mitzvah of Marer on Pesach. So these vegetables have big leaves on them. So Mivi'in esatome. So now as Rashi explains, these vegetables have nice large leaves, so they could create oil. It could create this roof of the size of a tefach, so that what's under it, if there's tumah under it and there's something else under it, it would become tameh. So, but the thing is, this is only when these leaves are moist. So then they're spread out nicely and it could create this oil, which oil both makes tameh what's under it and also creates a separation of anything else that's outside of it will not become tameh. So, because these leaves only remain spread out this way when they're moist, what happens is when they dry up, it shrivels up and then you don't have this tefach, you don't have this space that separates. So therefore there's a gzeira of Chazal regarding this. Let's see. So therefore what he said is that Mevin is Satuma, they are considered to be a roof. If it has a space of a tefach, that what's below it will become tameh. However, there's a gzeira of Chazal that these leaves should not be considered a separation, the chatzitza, that what's outside of it will not become tameh. And also, upaislin b'sukkah, if you use them as schach in a sukkah, it's possible for schach, even though right now it's moist and it's nice big schach, but it dries up, and it's going to be pasul mishum avir. And the extent of its psul is that it's going to be mamish like open air space. That's how pasul it is. And Rashi explains what the chiddush of that is. You have various different levels of pasul ischach. You have pasul ischach. Usually the halacha by pasul ischach is, it's not avir, it's not ear, it's closed, but it's closed with pasul ischach. What's the halacha of pasul ischach? So Rashi brings later from the Gemara that there's two different shiurim. If you have pasul ischach near the walls, so we learned this before already, pasul ischach near the wall becomes a doifin akuma. We consider the wall to be tilting into the schach, and as long as you have 4 amis or less of that pasul ischach, it becomes a tilted wall and it's going to be kosher. If you have pasul ischach somewhere in the center of the sukkah, not near the wall, so then the shiur for it to be able to still be combined to the sukkah is 4 tfachim. That's pasul ischach. However, if you have an open space of avir, where there's just ear open and there's no schach there at all, so there, the shiur for it to be able to be part of the sukkah, and it doesn't matter, is if it's 3 tfachim. Only 3 tfachim. More than 3 tfachim, that's considered an open space, and it's not part of the schach of the sukkah. So what he's saying over here is that the gzeira of Chazal regarding these leaves that are moist right now and cover the area is going to be possible for the schach as if it's totally open space, and if there's 3 tfachim or more, it's going to be a problem. Why is that? So the Gemara explains, my taime, kivin l'chiyavshi, since these leaves of these marer, when it dries up, parchi v'nafli, it shrivels, it breaks up and it falls, and you're not going to have anything there. So therefore, command the less no dami. Even while it's moist and it covers and it's there, it's as if it's non-existent, and therefore it's not a chatzitza for tumah, and it's also not schach for sukkah. It's considered to be like it's open space right now. Another statement from Rab Abba. He said in the name of Rav Huna, Habaitzer lagas, someone that cuts the grapes with the vines, and he's using it for a wine press. Ein lo yodais. The concept of yodais will not apply here. What's the concept of yodais? So Rashi here brings, this is learned from a pasuk actually, that usually only food is makabel tumah. Anything else that's part of that comes together with the food is not food, so it's not makabel tumah. However, there's a pasuk that teaches us that yodais, when you have the branches or that you hold the food with, which is like a handle, it serves like a handle, so you want those branches to be able to hold the food, to be able to eat from it, so therefore it becomes bottle, it becomes tafel, a secondary, a part of the food, and therefore it's also makabel tumah. And if the yad, if this handle, if this branch becomes tumah, the food will become tummy as well. That's the halacha of yodais. So comes Rab Abba and says, but if you're cutting your grapes together with the branches, with the vines, and you're going to be using it for the wine press, so then you don't want the vines. You just want the grapes itself for the grapes. You're not eating it and holding on to the branch, holding on to the pieces while you're eating the grapes. No, you don't. You just want the grapes for the wine press. So therefore, they're not considered to be handles. And therefore, they're not going to be makabel tumah. That's one scenario, when you're using it for a wine press. Rav Menashe bar Guda Omer Rav Huna. Rav Menashe bar Guda said in the name of Rav Huna, HaKaitzer l'schach, if you're cutting these vines with the grapes for schach, ein la yodais. It also does not have the halacha of yodais. The reason is because you don't want these vines together with the grapes, that the vines should be used as handles for the grapes. You don't want the grapes. The grapes are not supposed to be used for the schach. And if you use these vines together with the grapes, only if the vines are the majority and the grapes are the minority does it become batal b'roiv and it'll be kosher for schach. So in essence, you don't really want those grapes there together with the vines. So therefore, it does not serve as a handle to, like when you eat together with the grapes, and therefore it's not going to be makabel tumah. So the Gemara now says, Man da'amar kaitzer, the one that said that if you cut this for the schach, it's not considered to be a handle. Most definitely that would be true when you're cutting it for a wine press. He does not want the branches of the vines at all for these grapes with the wine press. So if you have these vines there, it's going to absorb the wine that's flowing out of this wine press. For sure, you don't need these vines, you need the grapes for the wine. Not only that, the vines are going to disturb, it's going to absorb the wine. It shouldn't absorb it. So for sure, it's not considered to be a handle. Man the Oma Boitzer she'ein la yodais, but the one that says that if you cut it for the wine press, so then it's not considered to be a handle. Avol kaitzer yesh la yodais. But when you're cutting it for the schach, even though you don't want the grapes there seemingly, because you just need the branches, the grapes themselves are not even kosher for schach, so you don't want them to be as handles, but it's not to this extent. Why? The nichele de l'sachich bohu. So yesh yadis over here, it is considered to be a yad according to this opinion. The nichele de l'sachich bohu, he is interested in having some grapes there in this schach. Ki heichi the loy lived it on. The grapes that remain on the vines create a certain weight in order for these vines not to be blown away by the wind and be scattered around. So he does want some grapes there in order to hold it down. So therefore, it is something that he wants, so therefore the vines serve as a handle to these grapes that he's putting onto the schach. So therefore, according to this opinion, it will be a handle. Okay, so we have over here this machlokes between Rab Abba and Rav Huna, when you cut it for schach, whether then it's considered to be a handle or not. When you're cutting it to use for a wine press, there everybody will agree that most definitely you don't want the vines, you only want the grapes, and therefore it's not considered to be a handle. The Gemara here is going to bring a braisa and say that it seems like that with Rav Menashe's chiddush is a machlokes tanoim. This goes into a lengthy discussion into the next Amud. We'll learn Mitzvah Shem tomorrow.